We're working on. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody online. We got a lot of people online. We have a lot of people in person, so thank everybody for coming out. We really appreciate seeing you guys. A lot of young faces in here, and that's awesome. That's incredibly awesome. So happy to have everybody here. This webinar is called Finding Bass in the Submerged Grass. This is my buddy, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro Seth Feider.
What's up, guys?
Myself, I'm FLW Pro Josh Douglas, and FLW co-angler Chad Smith joined us again.
How's it going?
All right, going to run through a couple things real quick for the online people. Of course, we're going to take questions from everybody at the end, people online too. There's a Q&A section here, and there's a chat section. We can see the Q&A section. Everybody can see the chat section. So if you got something specifically you want to ask us, put it in the Q&A part. We won't check the chat part. That is a great place for people online to talk to each other and just go along with the webinar. All right, we want to congratulate some people. We always like giving away free stuff when we do these webinars. We got a lot for people here online. And of course, the people that are registering online, we do it for them, and then people come in person. In this situation, these are the winners from our last webinar that we had. Glenn won himself a set of amphibias. Everybody should have received them by now. If you're listening and for whatever reason you didn't, contact me, let me know. Sim suit goes to Tom Norden, won himself a sim suit. And an all in charge went to Brandon Osborne. It's an awesome system. I just got mine installed on my brand new boat. Outcast tackle. Seth and I both use Outcast tackle exclusively when it comes to our jigs and stuff. And Chris won himself that Outcast tackle package. And a Daiwa tackle bag went to Kevin. Kevin Shires. Kevin Shires won himself a Daiwa tackle bag. So again, everyone should have received that. Rapala pack. We do like to give away prizes if y'all can't tell. I can't even keep up with how many sides we have of prizes we give away. Rob and Kenny both won themselves an awesome Rapala prize package. So big thanks to all those that came in and won the prizes. And then, of course, the awesome companies that give those stuff away for everybody for us to do these webinars. All right, we're going to jump right in it. Types of vegetation. We've talked before about emergent, floating. Now we're going to kind of talk about that submerged grass out on that outside.
And it's important to know what the grasses you're looking at too. Helps you dial in on what's really happening. So it's really important to know, especially when you start traveling, every kind of grass, what it is, where it grows, what it does, and we'll get into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Eelgrass, these are just good ones to go back and look to. These are just some of the common ones. Of course, there's some that we're missing, but these are probably some of the bigger ones that we are day in and day out. Go back. Yeah. Eelgrass. Yeah,
eelgrass, finding a lot of river systems up here, be Mississippi River, smaller streams. It will grow in some lakes, but typically if you're seeing eelgrass, you're around, some form of current.
I know Florida has a lot of eelgrass too when we're down in there.
Yeah.
Coontail. Coontail's a big one around here.
Yeah.
Big one of river systems too. You can find that dirty shallow to real deep too.
That's probably the deepest growing. Some Hydrailla grow really deep too, but as far as North Country stuff goes, I mean, coontail can grow out to 25 feet in certain lakes, and
easy
real shallow too. But
easy one to know. It's got that raccoon type tail on the end of it when you get it up. Thick, grows in bunches. Curly leaf pondweed, cabbage, spring cabbage, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. Curly leaf, typically you see it a lot in the spring. Especially like lakes that have a lot of milfoil in them. Typically, right when the ice comes off, like it'll start out all curly weed. And in this part of the country, like usually like early June, about all the curly weeds dead and gone. You'll see a lot of times milfoil grow up in its place. It's not a long-lasting plant. It's kind of spring orientated, but going and on cabbage, a lot of up north lakes have it.
Yeah, and that spring cabbage can be good too when like you said, when it's about dead and there's only a few stalks left around, them can hold a lot of fish because the milfoil and everything ain't quite up there yet. Hydrailla. We don't have Hydrailla here, not that I know of. Down south we see it a lot. It's a predominant one. It's our milfoil like we have there. They have it down south. Chad and I will be heading to Florida soon.
Yeah.
We'll be doing a bunch of Hydrailla while we're out there. Fishing a lot of Hydrailla. deep Hydrailla and shallow Hydrailla. You're a rattle trap guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Milfoil. I'm going to tell you something about Seth. I've known Seth for a long time. Everybody knows Seth as a smallmouth fisherman. I know that's how he got his reputation now that he's on the elites and stuff. But this dude has been fishing milfoil, and probably is the best milfoil fisherman that I honestly know out there. That he can read milfoil inside and out. I'm going to let him talk a lot about it. I fished it a bunch at Lake Minnetonka, but a lot of time I was just trying to pick up his crumbs when we were out there, whatever he didn't get to. He definitely knows how to read it better than most.
My favorite grass.
We're talking about the Eurasian one, not the American one.
Not the American. There's a little bit of American milfoil,
especially up here,
aka northern milfoil.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite grow. Doesn't seem to grow as thick as Eurasian or as deep, but
the stocks will hold some fish
similar,
still. But
yeah.
A lot of times in that Eurasian, we'll talk about that. You can get big schools in that stuff. Here we're talking about. We're going to start right away talking about some shallow weeds. Now. We're talking about the inside weed line. This can be peppergrass, eelgrass, shallow stuff. Spring stuff, a lot of times we're on that inside weed line, targeting little clumps of vegetation and stuff like that. We're not going to touch about it a whole lot, but we're going to run through some of it. Here, this is a perfect example. This is on my Lowrance unit. You can see on my left side right here is a retaining wall. On my right side, you have the weed line just starting to grow, and you have an inside weed line right up the gut that my boat's going into. You can see out here would be considered your outside. Here would be your inside. Targeting that, they like to move from them when they're spawning. They move in there, they move out of those things. So following them.
Sorry, nobody can see it. I just found out.
oh no.
Hold on.
Sorry, guys. We're having we gotta get people back on. That's why my phone's going crazy.
Probably.
Yep.
So there it is.
Sorry, guys. We're using a new system.
Good. Okay, I need to shut down the presentation real quick. What slide are you on?
Like some Jeopardy music. Yeah.
Can we just take it so that they can't see us online? How about that? They don't need to see us.
Let me try this one last ditch effort. Stop share. So now they should. Can anyone? Are you guys logged on back there by chance?
Can you see
You can see the screen? Oh, wonderful.
the screen or us? The screen? The presentation? Perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, where were you? How many had you gone through here?
Go to inside weed line right there.
That
Next one. That's fine. Yep.
Still good? Awesome. Okay, sorry. We got to apologize to everybody. This is a far more sophisticated system here. We're at Grandview Lodge, and this place is awesome. And Seth and I usually used to sit in there at one of our houses or something behind the screen. So this is definitely a treat for us. Where are we at? All right. Isolated shallow weed clumps. This can be a big one too, especially in the spring. Here you can see on the right hand of my screen, we're on a big flat. And just these are just little balls of vegetation. Maybe the milfoil is just starting to grow right there. It could be some eelgrass, something like that, right on the edge. These are the type of clumps that we're looking for. And, I'm showing you graph images, but please know a lot of times it's your eyes. When you're on the inside weed line, you're using your eyes. But in the spring of the year, everything's up shallow. The bluegills, everything. Bare spots.
Yeah.
Talk about bare spots.
It's similar to an inside weed line, but you'll find, bare spots just out in the grass flats, maybe little high spots or somewhere the bottom changes a little bit and the grass doesn't grow. Killer spots for sure.
Which favorite bait to throw in there?
Probably like a wacky stickworm kind of deal.
Bluegill beds. This is a good image of Seth runs Hummingbird. It's a 360 image.
Yep.
And you see the bluegill bed right dead in the middle of all that stuff right there.
And those will play in a grass flat like that. Those will play year round regardless of, especially you can see how thick the grass is all around here. Even if the bluegills aren't spawning, that little clearing is still going to be an awesome ambush spot for them. They can sit tucked in that really thick grass, keeping their eyes poked out on that hole. Anything swims across there dies.
Chad, when we're talking, you fish the river a lot. Eelgrass is a big one.
Yeah.
You're not dealing with a lot of outside weed line stuff. What do you tag? How do you tag that eelgrass?
I mean, I like fishing the edge of it a lot. Sometimes it's usually pretty shallow, so you can go around and I'll like flip the edge of it off kind of a lot of like main river kind of areas. A little bit of current pushing through them's typically pretty, wanted. But yeah, I like flipping the edges of it a lot.
Yeah, and those fish can hide. Again, the biggest thing about the vegetation is they're protected and they can ambush. Everything lives in there. They can hide in there.
It's a circle of life for a fishery. There's a lot of places we go down south that don't have any grass in them or anything like that, but every lake that has grass in it's
that's going to be your production.
That much better, and it's it's where all the little bluegills hide. It's where the bass live. It's if you go to a lake with grass in it, that's majority of your fish are going to be living in it.
Absolutely. Here, this is the image side by side on my Lowrance. You got down scan on the left. On the right side here, I'm just using traditional sonar, trying to find sweet spots in the grass. I mean, sometimes you look at milfoil and it can go on for football fields, and you're trying to figure out where the bass are in that because it's a lot of dead water. Little things here, you can see there's a little bit of a dip, and then it comes up onto a little bit of hard spot. That's actually a rock right there. If you can see my cursor, you can see it right there too in the sonar, that harder image that it picked up right there. Those little kind of irregularities, a lot of times you're not going to catch them on your graph. You got to fish them, but finding where that little, the bottom tells you so much of what the bottom.
When you're fishing in grass flats, because you're in a, essentially a solid area of cover, little tiny. I mean, literally like one rock this big could be, a magical spot. So the spots fish really small when you're in grass. It's not like a point, if we were just fishing like rock stuff. Just a little tiny thing inside the grass can,
and here, sorry, go ahead.
Catch thousands of bass off them.
And here being in Minnesota, we can't fish until opener. And if all you guys in here are like me, you're going pretty crazy by the time the lakes open up and stuff. That's a great time to go out and just idle around. You can't fish. We might as well go out in these areas that hold all this vegetation and look, because the vegetation's not up yet. You can feel around in there. You can see a lot of stuff that you'll come back and catch fish out of for sure.
Yeah, it's one of the best things I did right when I first got a Sidescan a long time ago on Minnetonka. I spent probably 2 weeks out there right when the ice came off. All the all that stuff's typically covered in grass to the surface when you go out there in the summer and you're trying to fish it and you can't really see anything on your graph at that point. But right after ice out, a lot of those areas are bare, have really, really short grass. And you can run through those areas really fast with a side scan, find a lot of cool stuff you never knew was there, little hard bottom areas and stuff like that really pop out when there's nothing there. And if you spend your time in the, right depth zones where the grass is going to grow, when you come back in the summer, you can have some really special stuff there.
Absolutely. That, and when I was lived in Chattanooga for a little while and fished Chickamauga, Guntersville a lot, they have a lot of weeds, lots of Hydrailla, and it's warm, so it doesn't necessarily die off too much. I mean, it gets cold enough there that some of it does, but they also draw the water down a lot. And when they draw the water down, that's going to kill out a lot of that weed stuff that you're going to be able to see before the spring rain brings it back up. You're going to be able to see stuff. So again, just getting out there and putting in the time. It's shallow water is no different than deep water. Now we're going to slide to looks like we're sliding to the outside of the weed line. This is a Minnesota nectar right there. That's a outcast tackle jigworm. We use that a whole bunch. We'll get into some of that presentation type stuff here in a minute. This is just locating high percentage areas, using your electronics, using your Navionics mapping, stuff like that, getting out there and rolling around. Looking, first you got to figure out where they're going to be, time of year and stuff like that.
With the shallow stuff, it's pretty much, a lot of it's visual. You're doing it with your eyes now. When you get out to the outside edge, a lot, most of your looking is going to be done with your graphs. Yeah,
and if use the day to your advantage. If you're out there and you're practicing for a tournament, it's a cloudy day, you might have a shallow bite, you might have a deep bite, go deep. When the sun comes out the next day and it's going to be bright sun, then go shallow, because you can just see so much better when the sun's out, especially when you're looking for those sand spots and stuff like that. They'll glow back at you. Mm-hmm. The kind of stuff we're looking for when I'm out scanning around in the deeper water, the edge of the weed lines, I'm looking for turns. On this image here, you can see there's a nice turn before it comes to this point. There's actually some hard bottom out here. You can see my cursor. Yep. You got a nice point here again. Same thing. Inside turn, little points of weeds. I mean, it can be straight all the time. Then all of a sudden it turns in. Well, that's a stop sign. Those fish have something now. They're gonna ambush. Again, they're using the vegetation a lot to hide. so that a muskie don't eat them, and 2, so that they can eat everything else that can't see them.
Yeah. And this will be a reoccurring theme, but I mean, basically where the rocks meet the grass, I mean, that's what you're looking for.
Lights out.
I mean, if you can find it, some places you'll fish won't have a lot of rock in them, but if you ever get to those places where you have a hard weed edge buttered up to some, you know, a good sized rock pile, it's going to be a good spot at some point in time in the year.
Here's another one kind of we saw. Here you got more of a straight edge coming across on that weed line. Here you got some hard bottom stuff out here. You got a boulder right here, a little rock, and a big bluegill bed, just like they do on the inside. I've seen them out in 20 feet deep.
Yeah.
And those actually hold a lot. That's good fishing. When you can mark those and you can see that there's fish there, you'll feel them pecking your bait and stuff down there. There's bass around there somewhere. Yeah. That's what they eat.
Bluegill typically spawn every full moon during the summer period. So
yeah. And real importantly, right after the bass a lot of times.
Yeah.
And they've been tormenting the bass for a month. Bass turn around, return the favor. So this is courtesy of Bass Brawl Outdoors. Casey and Lyle, good buddies of ours. They do some pretty awesome things with their electronics. This, I believe they call it farming. They're actually putting together strips of recorded side imaging sonar and stuff to get a bigger image look to them of what they're actually seeing.
Yeah.
And
really
it's
cool
sweet.
stuff.
We love it. We sit there and look through that stuff all the time.
But same deal here. You got a point coming out with some hard bottom on it. That's going to be an obvious, really good spot to hit. And then also in this turn, same deal. You got a little notch in the weed line here. Turns and points are pretty much the deal. A real hard straight edge can be good too if it's on like a real hard drop. But a little bit of hard bottom in here. I mean, those are super high percentage places. You know, if I'm going to go outside scan looking for stuff, that's what I'm going to be marking.
Yeah, and you're talking crawdads live in the rocks. I mean, bluegills are always around them. We got pictures to show you exactly what that looks like. Here's another one. That's
yeah. This one, it's got a lot of interesting stuff going on here. You got a big hard bottom point sticking out here, nice hard edge. That's going to be an obvious spot. But this one has also got a nice little. It's kind of hard to see. You can go right over it, but there's a little hole in the middle of that point. Holes are awesome places to fish in the grass. That point's got a lot going on.
Chucking a Carolina rig down this edge.
A lot of stuff you could do there.
They're going to sit there with their butts in the weeds and their heads sticking straight out. So anything that comes by them, they just come out and grab, bring it right back into the weeds. So trying to hit all those different kind of areas. You know, we'll talk about more some presentations, but a jig worm, a Carolina rig, a deep. Maybe a DT16 or something like that out here on them rocks, a football jig, stuff like that. All good stuff. What about you?
Yeah, I mean,
You're just shaking your head.
Yeah, I agree.
Whoops. All right, scattered hydrillas, some stuff Chad and I will be looking at. I think this actually is Florida somewhere. Scattered hydrilla, just like same thing here. It can be thick and matted out. And as it skirts out to the end, it starts getting clumpy and out to the outside edge. And this is exactly what that is. Big bass use those clumps. That's their clump. It's like a boat dock to them. You know, that's their clump of weeds, and they're going to sit in that clump of weeds. Or, you know, it ain't nothing to see multiple ones there. The bait's holding in there. Here you're throwing a rattle trap, a ChatterBait, something like that. Speedworm.
Cover some water.
Covering water. Yep.
Like I said, like the spots in the grass are going to be small. And you can get a little overwhelmed marking stuff when you get in this kind of places, like with your side scan and stuff, you know, marking every hole. A lot of times when you get in stuff like this, it's best just to fish. But when you catch fish off one of them little clumps or one of them little holes, they usually hold true. So you can waste a lot of waypoints marking every little clump out here. If it's scattered like that through a big area, you're best almost just getting on your trolling motor and, you know, fishing around, and when you do catch one, put a waypoint down and kind of remember what direction you're throwing, and
try to remember right where you're throwing.
Yeah,
There's generally in stuff like this, there's more right there. You know, they are schooling fish, so there could be a school of them sitting out there, and they'll move around a little too. You know, on stuff like this, they could be up in here, and then they're just down here 30 yards the next day, something like that. You just have a great reason to pick up a chatterbait or a rattle trap, something, start moving some water. Some presentation and tackle. You guys ever notice this? If it's cut right here, it looks just like his mustache right there. But that's actually Seth's new jig. We should talk about that real quick. That's coming out. he almost won an Elite Series tournament at Champlain with that beauty.
Yeah.
Tungsten Head will
Little
be out
tungsten
soon.
jiggle. We'll get into the baits here in a minute.
There you go.
Okay. We broke everything down basically to horizontal presentations and vertical presentations. This is a horizontal one. Typically, I like fishing this way over shallower submerged grass. It's going to be more a lot of your Hydrailla. A lot of places we go, it doesn't grow real deep. Early milfoil in the spring when it's coming up. Cabbage and a little bit around coontail, but this is going to be a lot of that mid-depth zone, that 2 to 6, 7 feet where you got 3-4 feet of water on top of the grass you're fishing. That's when I really like horizontal baits. Then when you get later in the summer and lakes where it's deeper grass, where it's grown to the surface, that's when I like to get a more vertical. But give it a rundown. We got Outcast Swim Jig, awesome way to cover water. And a lot of these baits, they'll be day to day or even regional or whatever. Swim Jig you can't go wrong with. The Rattle Trap, that's awesome spring bait. Works well in the fall too. Jerk bait, that's probably becoming one of the best post-spawn baits. I mean, a lot of guys are, we always think of that as a cold water bait, a pre-spawn bait, but when fish get post-spawn, they get really funky, and the erraticness, and if you work a little different, fish quite a bit faster, but the erraticness of a jerk bait's really making it becoming probably one of the best post-spawn baits there is. You got ChatterBait in there. You got a wiggle wart in there. That's probably my favorite crankbait for getting into the tops of the grass and ripping it free and working it off those edges. You can catches a lot of fish. Awesome early spring bait. Then we got a little swim bait and a speed worm. I'm not a big speed worm guy. You guys can maybe fill us in on that.
Go ahead.
Well, let me jump in real quick. Sorry. Most of these baits, you're trying to basically, with the exception of maybe the jerk bait fishing over it, you're wanting to keep that down in that top bit of the grass. You're kind of fishing it through there. If you're fishing Hydrailla in 4 feet of water and you got 2 feet of water over the top of it, you're just trying to keep that chatterbait just kind of right on the top of the grass, working through there and ripping out.
They call ticking a lot. You hear that ticking the grass.
A lot of reaction strikes like that, and you're covering a lot of water. Usually you're in like flatter situations there where, your cast might not be as specific. So good water cover and stuff. Go ahead, Chad. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. A lot of the things with like a horizontal presentation that I've realized is just how important making like grass contact is, instead of like a lot of people just fish the bait and a steady retrieve or whatever. But a lot of the times with like a rattle trap or, really almost whatever it is, if you're fishing over like a big grass flat, I think just, slowing down your retrieve until you hit that grass and popping it, and that just creates such a big reaction. But I think it's just effective.
And this dude's a trap star. I'm telling you. I know I've taught him a lot. He's had a lot of good teachers in his life that have taught him a lot. But generally, he's sitting there paying attention to what I'm doing. I remember him being in Florida last year for like 2 straight days. I couldn't figure out how he was catching all the fish from the back of the boat on a rattle trap, trying to duplicate everything he was doing. And he taught me how to throw it. Now it's like one of my favorite baits to throw. So it's a powerful bait. I swear I had a whole box of them, rarely ever threw them. Now it's one of my favorite ones.
Another thing I want to say, pretty much a lot of this winding stuff is going to be more fluorocarbon.
Yeah,
where we get into the I will do braid to leader with a little bit of that stuff, maybe the swimmer and the swim jig. But as we get into the vertical stuff, that's going to be pretty much all braid or braid to a leader.
Good point. Vertical. Let's jump right in it. One thing you'll notice, all three of us are running Daiwa rod and reels. These are the Daiwa Tatula Elite rods. Awesome. Their price point's fairly good considering the price of rod and reels these days for what you get. And I think for all these different presentations stuff we're talking about, they have the rod that you would need for that job. No doubt about it. Let's jump into her. Go ahead, Feider.
And also another thing I tackle, I like really fast reels in the grass. All this vertical stuff as far as bait casters go, I prefer an 8-to-1, 7-to-1 reel. Helps pick up slack. A lot of the fish, when you're fishing in grass, they'll feel tight on your rod when they're taking your bait, but it's only because your line's like over grass and they're actually coming towards you. So being able to move a lot of line is really helpful. Getting good hook sets in the grass. But as far as baits go, we got the new Stealth Feider jig. It's a compact tungsten jig, and something you'll notice about a lot of these flipping baits, we got the craw tube, the vial craw, the jigs. They're compact yet bulky, which is something you really want. You need the compactness to get in and out of the grass efficiently, but it's nice to have bulk too, because I mean when you're in that grass, a lot of them fish are reacting to feel and stuff like that. They can't see a long ways. When they're in the grass, they're got a very small window view, so you want something that pushes a lot of water, has a big presence, something they can feel down in there. Some of the stickworm stuff, that's kind of more like edge stuff and hole stuff, but as far as going into the grass and getting them, the jigs and the Texas rigs, compact and bulky is what you want. But with Outcast Tackle, we got a tungsten jig. That's the jig I was fishing on Champlain. Had an awesome finish there, caught a ton of fish on it. Be coming out soon this spring. Awesome jig. It's I saw a lot of problems with the tungsten jigs on the market, and I feel like we kind of nipped them all in the butt. Big sizes, big hook, awesome skirt. Then we also have the standard RTX jig. That's kind of just always been the bread and butter grass flipping jig up here. Super magnum gaff hook. You can use big rod, big line, all that stuff. Texas rig stuff as well. And then I know you guys want to talk about it. We got jig worms and a couple different ways to rig.
First of all,
stick
two craws on here. If you're from Minnesota, you should be flipping tube craws. They just straight catch fish.
And it's probably the best. As far as a flipping bait goes, it's the best number. You're not going to catch the same numbers on a jig that you will catch on a craw tube. You'll get more bites on a craw tube, hands down. Typically, you catch bigger fish on jigs. So, usually in team tournaments, I'll flip a jig all day. My partner will flip a craw tube all day, and he'll probably catch more than me. But at the end of the day, the fish you're catching on the jig are the ones you're going to typically weigh in.
Right on. Yep. Wacky Cincos. What else we got on here? Texas rig Cinco stick bait. This is an Exo stick by Biospawn. All good baits. That's something I've been doing a lot lately too. Texas rig Cinco, something like that. Just they catch fish. That's what they do.
And you can anytime you get around fish, even on that shallow scattered stuff, just a light little 1/8 ounce, 3/16 ounce Texas rig stick worm.
Don't take too
weedless.
much action away from it.
That's just a good way to get bit efficient stuff.
Good here.
Yeah. That jig worm, that kind of started out as a Minnesota thing. Now they're called Ned rigs or something. It's an old school technique. It really shines on like the outside weed edge, kind of where the weeds taper into the rocks, and then also those little holes in the grass. It's something I fish really slow. Real similar to the Wacky Senko. You just throw it in there, let it settle on the bottom for a little while, make a few little pulls of the rod, and whip it back out there. You're not covering water with that bait at all. Any of the stickworm stuff, that's kind of something you're gonna pick up once you've caught as many as you can with the other baits.
Jigworm is also a great bait too. When you're just fishing along, so you look down and you see a fish on your graph underneath it. A lot of times you can just drop that thing directly right underneath the trolling motor like you would a smallmouth, and they'll grab that thing. That looks like a bluegill to them.
And it does catch big ones. I know it
really big.
It doesn't look like anything crazy. It really is a numbers bait, but it'll catch really big fish too.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
This will kind of talk about. I got an awesome drawing in here. If you guys can see, can I move that? Can they see that? Or just move that a little?
You good?
Okay.
Did you draw that?
You should have seen his drawing.
It is way
He
worse.
tried.
We stole it off the internet. I'm going to talk mostly about milfoil here, and we'll get into like what baits work best. This little drawing's basically like a flipping deal, but we'll get over here. Start on the inside grass line. That's awesome. Springtime. There's always going to be some fish up there. It's a highway. It's a hard edge. But you're going to have a lot of fish spawning there. You're going to have a lot of fish cruising there in the spring. A lot of bluegills will spawn here. Always an awesome early morning, late evening place to look.
Wacky Senkos.
Wacky Senko.
Top popping frogs. You can be good. Swim jigs are good back in
Swim
there.
jigs are awesome.
A lot of times you're looking for bluegill or your prop
Yeah.
bait be a good one.
And a lot of times I'll just, rather than getting in the weeds and scaring all the fish with your trolling motor, I'll actually get the boat in the inside grass line. Depending on, some of them are only a couple feet off the bank, some of them are 50 yards off the bank. But I actually like to just cursor keep going. Oh, I'm breaking. I actually like to position the boat in the inside grass line, just make parallel casts all the way around this. Keep your eyes peeled. It's a good place to see fish as well. Then when you get into this kind of this like sparser stuff, you see where these numbers are and out into this deal. That's, you know, where your, what I call horizontal presentations are going to shine. Swim jig, wiggle wart, chatterbait, swim bait, stuff like that. That's chucking and winding stuff for me, like up in the flat. Then your deep outside edge, you know, that's awesome. Drop shot, jig worm, Carolina rig stuff, and then basically this denser area is what I would call like your, what I call flipping area. And we got this awesome drawing right here. As I said before, kind of gives you, it's the best way I could really represent what I'm looking for when I'm flipping. Typically, if you go to a place you've never been before, you weren't there to get out, you know, when the ice came off, you don't know where the hard bottom areas are. That's something you can do with your lake. Your mapping units, little points and high spots are typically hard bottom, but you never really know where they're going to be. And you don't need hard bottom to catch fish flipping milfoil. But if you see up here, this is like the grass topped out all the way at the surface. We're coming off the bank. So that's maybe like 4 or 5 feet. You're still matted out. That will play. I kind of like that early post spawn and then fall again. Yeah. But as far as straight summer flipping goes, this, I don't know if you guys can see this cursor on here good. This little area right here where the milfoil quits actually touching the surface of the water, it's a real subtle deal. Right here, it's matted up all the way to the surface, and then right here, it's, you know, maybe just a couple inches below the surface. Maybe an occasional strand still touches the surface. That's that edge I want to follow. It becomes purely visual for me. Glasses on, trolling motor down, and you're just dropping a jig every 10, 15 feet following that edge. You know, a lot of guys see all this really matted up stuff here. And they think that's where you really want to flip. But basically what you're looking for in the summer is the tallest grass. Now, this stuff is up to the surface. It's matted out, but we'll just throw out some fictional numbers. Let's say that's like 6 feet deep right there. If you come out here, you see these couple strands out here. They're a little bit shorter. They're not to the surface, but in reality, they're taller because it's, you know, 2-3 feet deeper here. So I'm looking for the absolute tallest milfoil I can find. And the thing about milfoil is it creates a cavern in the bottom 2 to 3 feet of it. It'll look super thick on top. It's really leafy, but the bottom, you know, 2 feet, there's no leaves on the stems. So there's basically a little cavern underneath there. Almost rarely you'll get some bites high up in the water column, but all your bites are going to come, you know, that far from the bottom. There's little caves in there. That's where the bass hide. They can move around in there. It looks crazy thick from the top. But and that goes with a lot of the grasses. Hydrailla too, when it gets out deeper, it looks so thick at the surface.
And it is. But you need a big weight to get through that, but then it falls fast.
There's little caves and stuff down in there. It's awesome protection for the bass. They're safe from any predator, and they can hide in there really well. And obviously the forage base is in there really thick. All the bluegills are in there trying to hide. They're in there eating little insects off the plants and stuff like that. But you know, essentially this little zone right here is where I'm going to cover flipping. And sometimes you'll get on areas where, you know, say this bottom dropped real hard right here. You would get a real clean edge, and those can be good to flip too. But I'm typically looking for like what they some people refer to as like the disappearing edge, where you can like just barely start to see the tops of the grass with your eyes. That's really that zone I try to stay in, and I kind of ignore my depth finder at that point and just put the blinders on. It's painstaking. It's needle in a haystack stuff. You're gonna go hours. I mean, up north there's so many fish in our lakes. You're gonna get some bites, but you know, you're gonna go hours without finding anything really all that good as far as spots go. But once you do find them, you put a dot there. It's pretty much all yours. You don't got to worry about anybody else finding it because nobody else went down that straight, nothing-looking grass line for 3 hours flipping. You know, they went to the point and gave up. And those fish are going to be there.
They stay there a lot
and
of times.
they're really
too.
small spots. When you crack one, I mean, you need to put a dot on. You're talking, I mean, there's been areas where you've kept 30, 40 bass out of an area the size of this table. I mean, that stuff is that specific. You go, you know, you flip your jig 10 feet down there and you'll never get a bite, but every time it lands right here, you catch one. So be real specific on your waypoints, remembering that stuff. And like I said, it's really grindy, so don't get disappointed in practice. Like I said, I mean, if you can find 2 or 3 of those spots in a day, you're doing really good. But like I said, you're going to have them to yourself. The fish are going to be there. You don't got to compete with anybody. And if you take care of them, you can milk them for a whole summer or multiple years.
No doubt. I mean, 100%. For years out on Lake Minnetonka, I'd get out there any chance I got and take a 1 ounce weight, 3/4 ounce weight, a craw tube or something, and just start moving down this edge, like what he's talking about right here, for miles and miles, just going back and forth, flip. Second I get a bite, thunk. I mean, it might end up being a pike, might be a little bass. If it's a bass, I'm going to keep fishing that waypoint right there. And I'm not kidding. Like, don't catch a 4-pounder and do an Instagram story quick because you're already floating away from where your fish are. Like, if this was the milfoil flat, they're on 3 tables in right there, there's 40 bass, and all the rest of it's empty. So that spot's very – I used to, even before the waypoint was so good, just kick like a buoy off the side of my boat so that I knew right there. Because you'd be amazed that you get off 20 feet and then you start flipping again and you think that was the only bass there, and you just left a 20-pound bag that was sitting there. So,
and this is all heavy stuff. This is big rods, braid,
oh yeah,
1/2 to 1 ounce stuff.
Cracking.
You want a vertical fall in there. It's pretty much reaction bites. They're not going to swim 5 feet to eat your bait in this stuff. I mean, you're hitting them in the head and catching them basically. So don't be afraid to flip. Once you get in an area where you're getting some bites, don't be afraid to flip every foot through there. You know what I mean?
all right. We good on that one?
Yeah.
Let's talk about smallmouth. You know, we like smallmouth and weeds. I used to avoid weeds a lot when I was fishing for smallmouth. That's not necessarily the case.
They relate to grass a lot different than a largemouth does.
They like to stay by the grass. A lot of times I don't catch them in it. I catch them next to it.
Yeah.
Cabbage clumps, milfoil clumps. They patrol the outside edges. I mean, I'm sure they'll run in there and grab, but they're eyes. Largemouth is like a mountain lion. They sneak up and they ambush. Smallies are like wolves. They work in a pack. There's big of them. They can see really good, but they're going to use those because the perch are in there, the crawdads are in there, everything that they want's in there. So they're going to patrol the edges. A lot like how you can see you got barren sand, you got a little bit of milfoil or something right there, and bam, there's a smallmouth on it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric, for that picture.
And largemouths, a lot of times they'll be buried right in the middle of the thickest weeds, or if they're on the edge, they're right on the edge. Where smallmouths, they'll use the edge really loosely. You know, they might be 10, 20 feet actually off the grass edge cruising down.
You might catch them with top water over it, and we'll talk about that. We'll definitely get to that. But, yeah, the smallmouths and the largemouths they just relate to the vegetation differently. This is a good side imaging shot and a down scan shot of area. Chad and I were actually catching them in Lake Champlain. Had a lot of cabbage and stuff, stalks of it. The fish were there. They were there heavy too, and you wouldn't think it. But you can see through here, there's scattered rock all through this whole thing, and just little clumps of vegetation in there. Held perch. It held a lot of perch and crawdads. Some of the baits that we'd use. Again, here's one on the outside. You can see right here is a boulder sitting on the outside. You have a grass edge. You got all this bait sitting right there. Rocks. That's a great spot. No reason why smallmouth don't run. They like sand. They move up and down that deal. A lot of times, again, we're going to go back to those horizontal baits. We're going to throw a lot of jerk bait. Carolina rig. We didn't mention Carolina rig is a killer drop shot.
Carolina
Another
is
one we
actually
didn't
an
mention.
awesome smallmouth bait.
Yeah, catch the heck out of them. This is one of down scan. You can see the bluegills just inside these clumps of vegetation. Again, that's where the bait's at. That's where the fish is going to be. This is a shot right here. You can see outside of the coontail, whatever this was out here. You can see this group of smallmouths. These were all smallmouths. Just hanging there. Again, the perch were just inside. schools of perch from where they were sitting. That's just where they hang out. Whenever I go to this spot, I catch fish every single time. And for years now, and it's in New York. Every single time I catch fish on that spot.
Yeah, another thing I noticed about smallmouth, so like how I was talking about how small those largemouth spots are, how specific they are. Those smallmouth areas are a lot bigger. You know, they just cruise those edges. They're visual predators. They got their tail kicking at all times. They're just looking for something to eat. Where a largemouth might, you know, kind of wait in a good area and let something come to him. The smallmouths are going to be cruising that edge. So, you know, plus or minus that 50-some yards.
Throwing like an X-Wrap or a shower blow, some up on top of the water. Any kind of spook walking bait are going to be good. All chartreuse spinnerbait.
Yeah.
We crushed them on all. It's weird. You don't even know what they think it is. But again, smallmouths, they use their eyes. So all of a sudden this blazing on braid, whipping a half-ounce chartreuse as fast as we could. And all of a sudden it's like a freight train hits your rod. You're just like, and there's a 4-pound smallmouth jumping all over the place. But again, I can bring it through them because it's not thick, you know, it's fishable. It's something you can, there's rows and stuff you can throw them in. And, you know, you watch your jerkbait, all of a sudden you look behind it and there's 2 4-pounders following right behind that thing. Again, a lot of perch, a lot of bluegills. Here we talk about matching that resident forage when you're in there. You can see here was a crawdad and there's my tube matching it. Chad had a goby and there's using a little Kitech swimmer or something to duplicate that. Again, whatever's in the vegetation. I think we're going to start getting close. Okay, we're getting close to the end. We're going to open up to questions. We'll get into more specific stuff as y'all have questions. It's our duty as fishermen to put this on here. What's it called? What's milfoil and all that called?
Invasive
Yeah, that's where I'm looking for. Invasive species are a big deal. I know we talk about milfoil and we like to fish it and all that, but still it's our duty to not carry it all over the country, all over the state. Zebra mussels are a big deal. Wash your boat, dry your boat, all that kind of good stuff. Make sure your live wells are empty. And two, another one, we see it a lot and we're guilty of it too. Trying not to box your fish all the time. To do stuff like that, again, is just something that helps prevent anything from moving. I know everybody wants a picture, but it's easy to take a picture and throw one back. All right, our webinar, this one's wrapped for the most part, outside of questions. Again, you can go to my website, it's joshdouglasfishing.com. Go under videos and webinar. All these are archived. I did not realize that we're on our 3rd year already of doing these. I did not realize that we've been doing them.
Anniversary.
Yeah, thanks, bud. Good job. And yeah, so they're all archived down there. Anytime you can get a hold of Seth and I through social media. Yeah, we got to figure out, we never got to this slide. We got to figure out our next webinar. It's probably going to be around the Classic. My dude's in the Classic, his first one. We'll try to have one before that and do a bunch of good Classic prizes, talk about some stuff like that. So just stay tuned to our social media to get that. But again, you guys can email us, contact us at any time. There you go. Mailing list, I guess we have one now. Facebook.com, Josh Douglas. Oh, yeah, I remember this. You can definitely get on our mailer. I think probably the easiest way is just social media. You can get ahead of us, our emails. Big thanks to Grandview Lodge for having us out here. And, of course, Boomer's Tackle for opening this up and getting all you guys involved, getting us involved, bringing us up here. I live in northern Minnesota now. If you call Mille Lacs, northern Minnesota, I love it up here. So it's good to start seeing some new some new faces and stuff like that. What else we got? Got to give my wife credit. She is the fisherman's widow. And she's not so much no more. Now she quit her job. She travels with me full time doing all that stuff. So she's far from a widow anymore, but still she is the brains behind all this stuff. We can talk fishing till tomorrow easily, but we definitely couldn't put together a presentation or any of the videos and photos and stuff that we do, handout stuff, give away all that super clean, all that kind of good stuff. Should we do prizes before? Yeah, we would do prizes before. Questions. Should we do some questions first? No, I gotta get off this to do the questions. Okay. All right. Let's do we're gonna do the giveaways real quick. Yeah, hold on one sec. These are featured giveaways courtesy of, I want to thank these companies: Outcast Tackle, Hydrowave, TH Marine, Featherwick Sims, and Woo Tungsten. These companies right here will be sending out to people online. We'll notify them very soon of who won. We're going to do the live viewer giveaways right here, right now. Everyone's got cards on them. Let's do them. Anybody not get a ticket? All right, wait 1 second.
We can go to certain questions.
No, 'cause I don't know how to do. I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay.
We get lost. You know, like.
You want to start firing some of these?
Make sure they get everybody get a chance to put their card in the hat. Guys, everybody that's here got a bottle of Super Clean from us when we came in, a little sample pack. That stuff is, question? Oh, she didn't take it. One more ticket. That stuff's awesome. If anyone follows my Instagram page, you'll see that I just cleaned a bunch of old crankbaits, got the rust and everything off them with that stuff. It's awesome, works great. I use it to clean my boat all the time, gets everything cleaned up really good. It's good stuff. All right, live viewer giveaways. Well, what are we giving away? Hey, look, Chad. Look, Chad drunk.
Yeah. Peeking, Chad.
Oh, peeking.
It's got numbers on it.
Angle cooler tumbler.
I can remember something.
Going for it.
Yeah.
Dig deep. All right, number 807143.
Right in the back.
Nice.
We got another one?
Another Angle tumbler. These things are
Again.
awesome. I live off them.
807120. Nice.
Back's winning a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, keep that one. Nice.
Right, big winner right there. Where we going next?
We're doing
Hydrailla.
Hydrailla Ice Mini. These things are awesome, by the way. They work really well. We use those when we wade for smallies, too.
807128. Right there.
Yep. That's our last one.
Okay. Two. Outcast?
Boomer's hats.
Okay.
We got 3 Boomer's tackle hats.
Draw 3, Chad.
Got 3 right away.
Or you want
Draw
to get one
3.
first? Yeah,
No,
do
1 each.
All right, first one is 807101.
Right
Nice.
there, man. I got the jersey.
Next one is 807095. Nice. Last hat is 807132.
Right up front, big.
Yeah. A whole bunch of Outcast series.
Yeah, here's the first one, right?
Multiple ones.
Yeah.
Little handful.
Oh, there.
5, 8, 6.
How many packs?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
3 just for the first one.
807124. Next one is 807148.
No, these are so. Guys online, just start putting in your questions and we will get to them. 2, 3.
Next one is 807138. Next one, 807114.
I'm just going to get it all at once.
One big one. For the whole thing. Perfect.
Like, oh,
Yep. All right, then we got kind of our 2 bigger prizes here. We're gonna do. This is a big Rapala Biospawn
bunch of
giveaway.
good DTs in there. Some braids and pliers.
Winner is 807134.
Nice.
Oh,
All right, what else we got?
All right, and then our grand prize that we're gonna give away. Sims is giving a full rain suit to whoever wins this one. Obviously, we don't know sizes, so whoever wins it, I'm going to have you give Bree all your information, and then they will ship it directly to your house, okay? Here we go.
cool one.
Pretty stout.
What's that? Sim suit?
Yeah, that's, yeah. I want to win this one. 807125.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Gotta get this
Family
information.
cleaned up tonight.
Just see us after the webinar. We'll get your information and all that from you, okay? Cool. You want to help us get ready to do questions?
Yes.
All right. Getting back to it.
We're just
Okay, let me run through this really quick. What else we got on here? All right, again, the Sims Challenger suit, big thanks to Sims. Somebody online is going to win a suit too. So they gave a suit for somebody online and somebody here in somebody here present live.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. All right, Woo Tungsten. Woo Tungsten is a new sponsor of both Seth and I. Makes some awesome tungsten products. Also got kind of a new painted type one that the fish can't see, so you can't lose them as much. They offer high school and college discounts programs to get with them, and they urge you to go to their wootungsten.com. So being that we got a lot of young guys in here, stuff like that, please, by all means, check out Woo Tungsten for your tungsten needs. Check them out. And they are giving away a sample pack to somebody online. I think we are about there. Okay, big thank you to Navionics. Navionics is they put this thing on for us. They set this whole thing up, sponsor the deal. Again, there's Josh and me and Seth's information is all right here. So please, by all means, contact us. You got questions after this. If we didn't get to it, future webinars you want us to talk about, topics, all that kind of good stuff. And I think now we are rolling to the questions. So just bear with us for 1 second, everyone, and we'll be rolling.
We just gotta make that quick for him. Okay.
Okay. Can you go to this one now? So that people out there can see. We'll be fine.
Now I gotta.
You want to start doing live questions with people?
If anybody's got a question now, live or in studio,
I might just have to stop sharing.
In studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, just can you share this?
Yeah, that's
No questions?
not without theirs.
Yes, sir.
Spinnerbaits.
Yep.
I see you talking about pretty much everything else, but not too much on spinnerbaits.
Okay. It's a good option. Kind of a dirty water deal for me. Started throwing a lot of swim jigs the last few years. That's kind of really taken over the place of a spinnerbait for me, with the exception of like really muddy water. That's when I'll go to a spinnerbait over a swim jig. But I think you just get a lot more quality bites on a swim jig than you do over a spinnerbait. Spinnerbait's a good way to get bites, but it seems like the average size is a lot better on a swim jig.
You ever try like grinding through the weeds or anything, or just pretty much?
The spinnerbait?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can fish it slow like that. Big problem up here is all the pike. You know, if you go to a swim jig versus a spinnerbait, you're going to cut your pike numbers down in a tenth, you know, for sure less than half. So I throw a spinnerbait a lot more down south than I do up here. Up here, it's hard to beat that swim jig if you're targeting bass. If you just want to get bites and you're just going out having fun, spinnerbait's awesome. You can catch a bunch of pike and bass on it, but they're slimy. I don't like touching them. So
I mentioned the all chartreuse spinnerbaits killer for smallmouths. I like to even around here throw a spinnerbait for smallies more than largies. And also down south they have shad and lots of shad, and it seems like that might get some shad spawn, stuff like that. But if you're in an area like after ice out early in the spring where you can target bass, a spinnerbait will get the job done right away before anything does, or something will decolate or something that'll really start bringing
early
in.
pre-spawns the best time, really, where a
For sure.
spinnerbait will beat a swim jig. Is that, like, you know, most time it's like before bass season up here, but you know, that early that low 50-degree water, spinnerbait will outfish a swim jig. But as soon as it gets any warmer than that, I think a swim jig's a lot better bait. Any more?
What resources besides, let's say, Navionics you use for finding submerged?
I'm sorry, what was that? One more time?
Besides, let's say, Navionics, what resources do you use to find submerged weeds?
Yeah, well, that's a tough one.
Google Earth.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess that's one good point we didn't really bring up. If you're just looking on like contours on a lake map, you've never been there before, flat areas typically hold a lot more grass. Like, you know, if one side of the lake's a big giant flat and the other side's a real steep break all the way around shoreline, those flat areas are typically good places to look for grass. You can see a lot of stuff on Google Earth. But, you know, if you get in a grass lake, pretty much the entire lake, you know, if say the grass line's in 15 feet of water, you know, the majority of it's a true grass lake, I mean, anywhere 15 foot or less, probably going to have some form of grass. But Typically flat spots, if you just going on a whim to try to find some, is a good place to look.
We got a quick one online we can do. You
Okay.
talked about braid to fluoro. What leader knot?
FG.
I'd use the
It's a
same
complicated knot.
Braid.
Learn it,
Yep.
practice it. Winter up here is an awesome time to do it. You're sitting on the couch, you're watching TV, whatever. Grab a spool of fluoro, grab a spool of braid, practice it. It's changed the way I fish. I mean, I used to, especially for that like big flip and stuff, I almost always used to just throw straight braid. And if the grass is thick enough, you can really get away with it. But if you start getting into some sparser grass, a leader will get you some more bites. So learn the FG knot. It's the best one you can use. It's complicated. It takes a long time to learn, but. Any other questions live?
When you use ChatterBait, what temperature do you kind of switch up from the ChatterBait to the swim bait?
I'm just going to repeat that real quick so people online
Okay.
can hear. We're using ChatterBait. What was the question again? Using
ChatterBaits, the swim baits, and temperature, and then what kind of weeds are you using the ChatterBait?
You got it. Go ahead.
I think you're gonna repeat it.
I don't know.
Okay. His question was, what kind of temperature do you switch to ChatterBait? ChatterBait for me, it's typically going to be a visibility issue. It's a lot like a spinnerbait. If the water's real clear, I like the swim jig. If the water's got a little bit of color or you got a lot of wind that day, I like a ChatterBait. And then also early spring, late fall, I think a ChatterBait kind of outfishes a swim jig at that point too. But typically it's going to be a water clarity issue for me. A lot more vibration on it. That or if you have some wind, anything stirring up the water, I prefer ChatterBait.
I got a question online asking, does color of jigs matter when targeting largemouth eating bluegills? I'm going to say it does. I like black and blue a lot, or I love blue craw, any kind of color like that. Green with green pumpkin with blue in it. Maybe the sunfish, they make bluegill colored jigs a lot. Those will work great. Definitely. Seth?
Yeah, I'm with you there. Any kind of either, if the water is dirty, I like the black, but typically it's going to be a lot of those like green pumpkin colors with little highlights, a little bit of chartreuse, a little bit of orange, some blue, purple, whatever in there. Looks really bluegilly to me.
We had a good question online, a river question. Let's kick this one over to Chad. He's asking, when I fish the river, all the grass is just flat on the bottom from the current. Would I just need to find some slack where the current doesn't push the grass down?
Yeah, I think typically if you're having a lot of current where the grass is really getting pushed over, it's probably not typically going to be like a higher percentage area. I think for me, at least what I've noticed is just being near current or having like a slighter flow going through that grass so the grass isn't like totally keeled over. You definitely just want a little bit of flow so the grass can still kind of stand in its own thing, but enough to where you'll see the grass is pointing in a certain direction for sure. It's just going with the current.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the question, when fishing cabbage on a break, do you position boat deep and cast shallow, or boat shallow and cast deep?
Typically I'm boat deep, cast shallow.
Yeah, sometimes a parallel too, depending on what I can do. A lot of times not casting out. So,
For outside edge.
For
I like to
outside,
stay
yep.
outside of it.
me too.
You make a lot of noise going through the grass with your trolling motor, with your boat. If you can reach what you're trying to fish without having to cut up grass or drag a boat through it, I prefer it that way. Sometimes you get in such expansive flats that you have, if you want to fish stuff hundreds of yards in on the flat, obviously you got to take a boat through there.
The color white when it comes to flats for a jig. Like,
Yep.
Is there any situations I know people use it in dirty water a lot, but how about clear water?
No, for me, it's a clear water deal. The question was white when fishing grass. Down south, it's cool or a good deal. They got a lot of shad down there, but there is a time and a place up north, even though we don't have shad or just bluegill eaters. It was real popular on Minnetonka for a long time. Guys flipping a white jig in the milfoil, even in clear water. worked really well. I've had some good success with it as well. It's kind of that third color that people don't talk about a lot. You always hear about the green pumpkins and the blacks and blues, but that white's the third one you need to keep in there and keep them honest with it. It's kind of a weird deal. When white's working, nothing will beat it, and when it's not, you need to just put it down. It's an all or nothing color for me, really. But I've won a few tournaments fishing white, had some really, really good like blowout days on it. But when it ain't the deal, it's not the deal. But it's something you can figure out pretty easy. Just mix it in your arsenal.
White's one of those colors for me that I never like to throw right away. Like I put it on and I can see it too easy in the water and all that. But they'll tell you quick if they like it, and then all of a sudden it's the deal. You know what I mean? Like you get it in your head and you're like, yep, this is what it is. They'll tell you pretty quick.
Typically, I've done the best on it in the fall. Like that October time frame up here is when I've had my best days fishing white.
We got a question from somebody from Wisconsin. How long do you stay in the grass area? I typically spend 15 minutes. If no bite, then I rotate to a new spot. You know, that's always a tough one for me to answer. How much time? A lot of that depends on how well I know the area. If the conditions aren't just right, but I think they might get right, then I might stay longer. I might only stay 2 minutes if I don't like it. 15 minutes is a good general rule of thumb, though, especially tournament fishermen. I mean, but again, I can remember Lake Seminole. I was punching Hydrailla. First day, I had a great day. Was sitting in the top 20. Second day, and it was like I had to weigh in at 4, and at 2 o'clock, I only had 1. My mind kept telling me I had to go. The other voice in my head kept saying, where are you going to go? So I just stayed there. And in the last 45 minutes, caught a limit, started calling, stuff like that. So that is the answer I wish we always had for everybody. It's the one we're fighting for, when to hold them, when to fold them.
No,
That's what makes tournament fishermen. You know, you just have to – it's a gut thing, I think, and an experience, you know.
It depends on what's going on, you know. If you got a flip in school where it's like you flip right there and get bit, and you pull up and make a few flips there and don't get bit, you can probably leave. But it's not always like that either. A lot of times you'll just have like a 100-yard stretch where you had 3-4 bites down it that you might want to just work through again. But if you get in like a school situation, for largemouths anyways, like in the grass, a couple casts you should know. Really.
Casey asked, when flipping the deep milfoil with heavy jigs and Texas rigs, do you like straight braid or braid to a leader? Does it depend on water clarity? That would help. I like a leader now. I used to do straight braid. I prefer fluorocarbon. Honestly, I like fishing with fluorocarbon. I like the bites. I like how it sinks quick. I think it gives the bait good action. So just like my spinning rod, I don't know if I ever make a cast anymore that doesn't have braid on it. Very rarely, if I do, run straight fluoro. And now I'm starting to see the rod again. When you're picking rods and stuff for that, you want to match something that's going to match to braid. Or if you're going to flip foil with just straight fluorocarbon, you might want something more stout, more heavy, something a little more parabolic with the braid.
And for me, water clarity doesn't have an issue. It's more grass density. If it's solid grass, there's no way. Like solid, thick milfoil, you can flip straight braid, no questions asked. Those fish cannot see it. But sometimes you get in places where, you know, it's a couple strands of milfoil here, and then the foot over here is a couple strands of milfoil. It's basically the density. If I can see through the grass, I'm going to flip the fluorocarbon leader. If it gets to the point where I can't see through the grass, I'm going to flip straight braid.
And remember, zebra mussels, too, are a big deal around here. Lake Minnetonka, they love the milfoil. So sometimes straight braid might be your better deal, so you're not breaking it. But still,
you got
20,
braid
25,
too.
Yeah, you do. It's sharp. A good, healthy one, sharp. Question?
I think color matching jigs and trailers makes a difference.
Yeah, the question was, do we think matching jigs and trailers makes a difference? Sure. Sometimes I've gone the exact opposite, black and blue jig, green pumpkin trailer. It bites too. I think you got to, for me, do I think it looks good? Then I probably like it, you know. But sometimes offsetting that, you know, I've done it with smallies too. With crawdads, they have a white bottom on them, maybe something orangey and white on the bottom, something more green. Very rarely am I not throwing something green, though. When it comes to it, I really like the shade, different shades of green. And, of course, black and blue. I don't even know what they think black and blue is. I don't care. They bite black and blue.
Yeah.
They definitely, and a black and blue jig, green pumpkin trailer, that works really well too. That's always a good thing to do.
Yeah. In the summer months when you're fishing up here, I mean, they're pretty much eating bluegills in there. Like I said, basically a green pumpkin with some kind of accents, maybe dip your pinchers in chartreuse, or, have a skirt with like a little chartreuse or some blue in it just to break up that green pumpkin. I think it looks a little more realistic, rather than just like a straight brown jig.
I got a smallmouth question here. If you had a tube tied on, are you fighting smallies any different on a bait caster versus spinning rod, more horsing? Not a good idea. I actually just started throwing bait casters for most of my tube needs. I lost fish a lot on a spinning rod with the tube. I still like it, but I switched a lot of it over. Again, I go with a little bit more limber bait caster rod. A lot of times I use braid, do a fluorocarbon leader. I can stick them hard, and yeah, I can horse them. Then I can kind of get them in the boat flip, and get them in there. What size line do you use when throwing jerk baits over milfoil?
That's a good question. A lot of times I will step up to a lot bigger line. Typically, if I'm open water jerk bait fishing, it's pretty much 10-pound day in and day out. I've gone up to even 17-pound tests on a jerk bait. It all depends on how much water you have over the grass. Bigger the line, the shallower the jerk bait will go. So if you want to keep a jerk bait maybe just 1.5 feet, 2 feet down, you can throw it on 17-pound tests and keep it above the grass at that level.
Any more questions in here right now? Anything?
Have you guys found anything for a definitive transition between, say, your crop baits or your big fish baits throughout the year, or are they pretty much parallel throughout the year? Have you noticed?
A lot of those craw baits will really represent a bluegill really good. Even that craw tube or that a big jig and a trailer. When they're in those milfoil patches like that, they're basically eating bluegills. But all those baits I think really represent a bluegill really well too. So.
A lot of times too, it's a reaction bite. People don't always consider that. Sometimes when you're flipping, you think that's more of a dragging technique or something like that. But when all of a sudden you pop a 1 ounce weight or 3/4, that thing falls quick, and all of a sudden just hits them in the head. They don't really think. They just grab that thing, Give me see that.
Oh, you had a question.
Oh yeah, sorry, buddy.
I like to throw a frog and a swim jig a lot in the lily pads.
Texas rig Cinco.
Yeah.
Good one to flip around inside there and the clumps like that.
I've even cast it just like a jig. I guess it kind of be the same thing as like a swim jig, but just dragging it over and dropping it in pockets. Just making long casts with it.
Frog, always good
Yeah.
call. Good question. When would you choose a punch rig over a jig? For me, a lot of times when I'm using a punch rig, it's because I have to punch through something super thick on the top, but I still want a big, bulky jig profile. So jig, sometimes if I got something really thick, matted up Hydrailla, something like that, it's going to want to hold up. The weed guard, everything's going to work against me. There I can spin to like a punch skirt on a Texas rig, heavy, and that'll punch right through.
Basically a weight deal for me.
Yeah.
If I can't get basically as soon as I get over 3/4, that's when I'm going to go to a punch rig. If I can get through with a 3/4 ounce jig, that's what I'm going to fish. But if it takes more than that to get through, I'll switch to a punch rig.
All right, we're pushing it on time. We're going to take about 5 more questions online, a couple more if anyone has them here. Then we're going to wrap it up. Good question from Nick. Said, so I seem to have better success with moving baits during the spawn and post-spawn, and vertical presentation seem to be better as the summer hit. Have you guys noticed that? Or definitely, again,
it's
that's
the grass
vegetation.
height.
Yep. He said.
When the grass is short and got a lot of water over it, they're going to sit kind of – that edge they're hiding in is that top edge of the grass. It's only that far off the bottom. They're going to be positioned in here watching above them. Now, when you get in the late summer, the grass is all over the surface, so they're going to bury into the bottom of it, and that's when you start getting those caves or whatever you want to call them underneath the grass. So that's where a vertical presentation that gets to the bottom, it works better.
Ken asked, what frequency of sonar am I using when I'm scanning grass beds? I'm always in 200, 83-200, running 200 frequency for everything I do. Chad, we have a question for you. What would be your approach to grass in a river versus a lake? Like, how do you break down grass on the Mississippi?
I guess like baits wise, I mean, I really like, like eelgrass is a big deal. And like I was talking about before, it's going to be near current areas. And, I like to cover water maybe with like a swim jig or something like that and just fishing the edge around it. And,
Answer that one
but
quick.
I like to fish or just flip the edge too once I maybe find an area that's a little more higher populated once I get a few bites. But, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got another one right away. You're
Okay.
getting popular. When fishing as a co-angler, what is your primary rod take in order to fish a Florida lake like Kissimmee?
I guess like, I don't know. It really will depend about where you are. But I mean, in Florida, there's so much just like wide array of just vegetation. So I'm probably going to go with my first pick would be a bait caster of some sort. And Daiwa has a rod. It's a Tatula 7.4 heavy, and it's like honestly probably the most versatile rod I've ever thrown. I mean, it's got like such a perfect bend to it. I really can do kind of anything with it, any kind of reaction bait, and like just over like thick vegetation, or I mean, you can flip with it too and do all that kind of thing. But I'd say probably that specific rod would be my go-to rod for like a Florida starting point.
Someone asked what rod we're using in flipping milfoil. I like 7.6 heavies a lot of times, 7.9 extra heavy. Really, almost every single one of the Daiwa line has them rods in there. I use a whole bunch of them. They're my favorite.
Mike asks, will the bass stay in the grass in colder water or go deeper? In my experience, especially largemouth, smallmouth will be a little different, but largemouths, I think they spend all winter there. The few that I have caught through the ice have been on those last remaining weed flats that, still got a little bit of grass on them.
I got another question about,
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
And like in instance, some people like
Yeah.
peg their like tungsten weight down.
Yeah.
Is there any instance where you wouldn't peg?
No, every time. Yeah, always. Yeah,
Okay.
have to.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just if you quit pegging it, one, I don't even think even if your bait gets the bottom every time, I feel like you don't get near as many bites. And the other part is that if your bait does slip off and your sinker's on the bottom and your bait's hanging up in the grass, I haven't seen a need to not peg.
We got a couple more real good questions here. Here's a good one. How do you handle a different wind direction on submerged grass? How do other weather conditions affect grass bass? One thing I notice with that a lot, if I have overcast skies, windy, a lot of times they'll sit out on top of the vegetation, stuff like that. They'll get out, they're willing to move a little bit. Bright, sunny, calm days, and they are in tight. They're in like on that one spot on that table. They're getting bit. None of us are. They are.
Ideal conditions for flipping are calm and sunny. Once you start, calm and sunny is your best perfect end, and cloudy, rainy, windy is your worst. And the more towards this, thicker they're going to be in the grass, and the more towards the unideal stuff, that's kind of more you're going to catch them on that outside, short edge stuff, jigworm stuff.
I can't find the exact question on here how they wrote it, but I'm going to basically they're asking me about electronics and me using my electronics, whether it's downscan, sonar, side scan, to find bass in the vegetation. I'm not. A lot of times it's very hard to find bass actually in the vegetation. They're hidden. They're in there.
Yeah.
It's going to be really tough to do. I can find them around it. I can see them out on the outside, but a lot of stuff, what we're doing here in Minnesota, I'm looking for the grass. I'm looking for them outside, maybe the bait, but rarely am I actually looking for the fish. I'm more looking for their home.
Yeah, it's needle in a haystack stuff. Just put the trolling motor down and go. I see a lot of guys that like run around and, there's a nice looking point. I'm going to go flip that. And then, I'll go to the next point. Especially for like tournament stuff. My favorite stuff is like those, you look on the map and it's like the last place you're going to stop. It's that straight 2 mile. There's not a bump in. There's not a bump out. Straight grass line, because like I said, the spots are small. You don't need a main lake point to catch fish flipping right there. You'll have a straight grass line, but there'll be a little bump, a little 4 foot long bump out in the grass that's 10 feet long. That can be an awesome spot. Everybody and their brother is going to blow by it. You know, less pressure, less people messing with it. That's where I look. You can't really find a lot of this stuff off of like the contours on the map. It's something you just got to get on the weed edge and just literally flip a bait every 10 feet down it. And sooner or later, you're going to catch one.
Take 2 more.
Okay. Take one here. I'm going to find a good one.
Who's got a question?
How big does the time of day play a factor? Say you start a tournament, you know, before the sun comes up, you approach it differently towards the middle of the day versus the beginning of the day?
Well, a lot of that depends on how my day is going, of course. But different spots, sure. I mean, a lot of times, take that Lake Seminole tournament, for example. Every day I started, even the one I had after the second day, I started like with a buzz bait over the top of smaller grass clumps, shallower grass clumps that were, you know, kind of steep right off the bank. They were there, and then reverted into the vegetation where I knew I was going to kind of settle down and do that. Conditions, obviously, if I know, I mean, we all have weather apps. We know what's coming. If it's calm, I'm going to attack my grass right away. If I think the wind's going to pick up later, stuff like that,
Yeah.
for sure.
They do get weird in like super low light. Like, you know, the first 10 minutes it's light out. And like, I've noticed it a lot in like evening tournaments. Those like flipping fish will turn into like outside grass edge fish. By the time that sun gets really low, like that last half hour of light's really not that great. And same with the first, you know, 15 minutes of light. A lot of those fish will be on the outside edge.
Answer that one.
Okay. When a lake like Tonka has seen so much pressure throughout the season, what is a go-to tactic to find finicky fish flipping heavy cover milfoil? I'm really not going to change my tactics too much. I'm just going to force feed them a jig and a tube. Basically just trying to find schools that I'm the only one that found them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the way I avoid the pressure. Not, you know, there's obviously those, you know, super obvious schools, like anything in Maxwell Bay is a community hole flipping spot. So just trying to stay away from that kind of stuff's how you avoid the pressure. You can get kind of tricky with them and like flip little drop shots and stuff in there. But in my experience, you're best off just finding fish that haven't been
Yeah, we didn't really talk about flip
beat
shot
to
at all.
death. It does work. It'll
We should
get you some bites out of it.
Flip shot, a heavier setup, a little bit heavier, not much, but a bait caster,
I'm
something like
super
that.
stubborn. I just keep throwing a jig at him.
He
till
flips
they
a
eat it.
jig, is what he does. Someone asked here, what Navionics chip do we like best? That's an easy one for me to answer. They're my title sponsor. Navionics has got some awesome mapping. We know that. All the maps are actually the same between each one. It's just what's better for you. Most of the time, most people aren't going to fish much further on the regular outside of their tri-state region or what have you. I would recommend like a regional card. East, west, up here would be a north. For us traveling so much, I like a Navionics Plus card just because I can download anywhere in the U.S. and Canada that I want, and I just go there. So they're updatable. I mean, literally thousands of new maps are going up every day. So I'm constantly updating my map for wherever I'm going.
Okay. Mark asks, discuss your opinions on the snell knot for flipping grass, especially deeper grass. I'm not a straight shank guy I like it a little bit for punching really heavy, really shallow. But as far as the deep grass stuff going, I like a heavy extra wide gap hook.
I'm the same.
And I don't mess with a straight shake. I don't think you have the leverage to really. You have so much bow in your line and stuff when you're fishing that deep grass. I don't think you have the leverage to really punch.
Someone asked here, how long is Chad going to grow his hair for? I can answer that, actually. I know. Because right when we get down to Florida and it's about noon and the gnats come out, they're brutal. You need like Sims masks and everything. They will nest in his hair. It'll be shorter after that, I promise. One more, are we done?
What weight swim jig do you tend to use in the 2 to 6 foot range? Does the size vary based on weed concentration? Yes. Basically for me, it's a 1/4 and a 3/8. If I'm fishing 1 to 3, it's probably a 1/4, and then 3 to 6 would be a 3/8. You just want to be able to keep that bait moving, but still be hitting the tops of the grass.
Right on. Again, we can't possibly, we have a couple
Yeah.
hundred questions on this thing. So please, we'll look through it. If we did not answer anyone online or here, anyone here, please stop us on the way out the
Yeah,
door,
we'll,
all that.
we'll do all the
We'll do
ones
all
here
that
before
deal.
everybody goes.
And then anyone online, please, by all means, send us emails, stuff like that. You want something specific, and we'll get back to you. Now's a good time of year. We're not fishing. So I'll leave that alone. She's got to do that.
Okay.
Put on mute.
Cool.